We're coming to you all the way from Boksburg, Ekurhuleni, and this, of course, is for the second day of the National Dialogue on Anti-Corruption. As you would know, that yesterday was World Corruption Day, and of course, there's this 2-day seminar that is taking place here. Of course, we know that we've been listening to presentations there that were made by the National Anti-Corruption Advisory Council. You would know that this council was actually set up in 2 years ago in 2022, and they've made some very interesting recommendations in dealing with issues around corruption. And of course, I think the first and foremost, what actually stood out is establishment on the Office of Public Integrity and Anti-Corruption. But to talk to us more about this, we're joined by Mr. David Lewis, who is a councillor of NACAC. Thank you so much for joining us at SABC News. I think first and foremost, just tell us about this OPI, how you suggest it'll work, the nitty-gritties around it.
Yeah, well, you know, we've examined the law enforcement agencies, amongst other things, and the OPI is a kind of quasi-law enforcement agency. It's not part of the criminal justice system. And so we are recommending that it be built on the foundations of the SIU, which has been a very successful institution. And what its function will be, as is the SIU's function at present, is that it will be largely preventive. So, you know, one of its most important tasks, it will do investigations, but they're not investigations for the purpose of criminal prosecution. They're investigations where you see, for example, in the Tembisa hospital, absolutely pervasive corruption, that they will look at the management and governance systems of Tembisa Hospital and find out where the vulnerabilities are in the system in order to close those loopholes and prevent further corruption. And they may do that in respect of a province, in respect of a state-owned entity that are subject to particular vulnerabilities regarding corruption. They'll identify those vulnerabilities and look at them. But also they'll do work in public communication, public education, public mobilization, all, as I say, in the name of preventing corruption. And that will be the function largely of this SIU Mark II, in a sense, built on the basis of the current SIU and suitably rebranded and resourced.
Mr. Lewis, I think the problem around Chapter 9 institutions or institutions like this, sometimes the public always says that, you know, you'll find that their recommendations aren't legally binding or people won't take heed to it. When it comes to OPI, how will you ensure that, you know, you actually enforce, these issues around tackling corruption?
Well, one of the shortcomings of the SIU recommendations at present is that they're not binding. The Public Protector's recommendations, for example, are binding and were made so by the Constitutional Court. So one of our recommendations is that their recommendations be legally binding and made public so that there will be an enforceability mechanism. And, you know, in particular, the public will be an enforceability mechanism. You know, if it's discovered, 6 months after they've made a recommendation to appoint a new procurement head, they've not done so, then consequences will follow. But it's an important question you raise.
And then just last question, I'll just try and tie up two in one. You look at your tenure as a NACAC or in NACAC for 2 years. How could you rate yourself? And furthermore, when will you present this recommendation to Parliament as OPI?
I'm not sure. You know, that's kind of a bit out of our hands. You know, we've been ready to present our recommendations. We've submitted our midterm report where the recommendations are contained to the President. It's important to know it's not a final report, and so, you know, that's why this conference is valuable to us, so that people can comment on them and maybe give us I've changed my mind about some things even since we made the midterm report on the basis of people we've examined. But really the executive needs to speed up its response rate to this kind of thing, because we haven't got time on our side, really. So I hope that it does go quickly and smoothly.
And the work of NACAC?
How would I rate ourselves? I think we've done reasonably well. We're like most government institutions, substantially under-resourced. but I think we've done okay, you know, and does come a little bit hard to think that people think we've done nothing because our stuff has not been presented in public yet. But we have worked hard at it, and it's been a very exciting process. And the cooperation of the government agencies that we've been speaking to has been really excellent.
Mr. Lewis, thank you so much for your time. Of course, we will catch up with Mr. Lewis at another time. But I mean, like you just mentioned there, the recommendations of the establishment of an OPI, it would be interesting to see if it actually gains fruition and when they'll actually table it to members of parliament.